it's non-stop change here at Tottenham Hotspur. It really is non-stop change. We've seen everything that happened in the summer. Daniel Levy left after the summer. Scott Munn has gone. And now it looks as though Spurs have replaced Scott Munn with Rafi Morrison. As Spurs have announced, we are pleased to announce the appointment of Carlos Rafael Moersen as Director of Football Operations, a newly created role as part of the club's approach to build a modern, high-performance football structure to drive long-term success. And there's a whole statement on the website.
They said it was a summer of change. It looks like the winter of change as well.
Yeah, it looks like just the whole year of change.
A year of change.
So it says, Tottenham are pleased to announce the appointment of Carlos Rafael Morrison as Director of Football Operations, blah, blah, blah. Known as Rafi, he joins from the City Football Group, where he spent more than a decade in senior roles across global football model, most recently playing a central role in player transactions as Director of Football Transactions. Rafi's appointment is part of a sustained focus on strengthening the foundation that support performance on the pitch, which include an appointment of Dan Lewington as Performance Director, who will join us next month, and increase investment in our academy to enhance the pipeline of talent ready for the first team men's football. Rafi will lead our football administration, player care and training ground operations, and will join the club's executive leadership team. A key part of his role will be overseeing women's football, where we'll be continued to drive a renewed focus and ambition for Tottenham Hotspur women. Sporting Director Johan Lange said, "We are delighted to welcome Rafi to the club to the newly created role of Director of Football Operations. He was an outstanding candidate from a highly competitive process and brings a wealth of experience in the critical area of our football operation. His appointment is an important step as we continue to strengthen our football structure and support long-term success." What do we make out of this?
I mean, fine. I mean, seems to have a good track record. We know that Scott Munn wasn't fancied here. He's been very quickly replaced. A lot of people, obviously when you have yesterday the departure of Paratici and today this announcement, people put two and two together. But yeah, this isn't a Fabio replacement. It's a completely different role. Now, in his other role, he was
a negotiator.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. Here he's Director of Football Operations. Is negotiating part of that remit? Is that what we're thinking?
Paul O'Keefe said a couple of weeks ago when the Paratici thing first started coming out that this guy is going to have a big kind of role in the transfer market for us.
In this?
He didn't elaborate on it. That's what he said.
I doubt it's like scouting and things like that, but maybe
must be negotiations.
Yeah, like maybe he's taking over from what Levy was. I don't know who's been negotiating in the meantime.
Probably Vinay, I would guess.
Vinay or Fabio Lange. I doubt it'll be those, because their just job is to identify talent. I would say they're not the money men. Is Vinay the money man? I don't. Maybe. But I think this guy seems as though he's going to come in. Maybe he understands market value for certain players. He's been around the block when it comes to lots of transfers. He's already been a Director of Football Transactions at the City Group. So I think he's a good guy to have when it comes to determining, are we paying fair price for a player? Are we overpaying? Can we afford to splash out a bit more on this certain player if we really need them? And those kind of aspects. I think that's key.
The thing is, right, I'm just so sick and tired of all this, because it seems it's just so never-ending appointments, never-ending sackings inside the boardroom, outside the boardroom. Scott Munn was the latest one. He came, he left. Now this guy's in. You know what I mean? It's just it's hard to get excited about any of these guys when none of them have a long tenure.
Yeah, I mean that has been the case recently. Now, when it comes to how this relates to us on the footballing side, apart from obviously him being in charge of transactions, he's Director of Football Operations. Now, I'm guessing the first team falls under that. That's Football Operations. So, should Frank be fearful of this kind of appointment? Is he going to have a say when it comes to whether Frank has a job or not? Is that a different voice in the lead in that hierarchy in terms of getting a vote?
Well, I don't think Tom Barkley says he's going to report to Lang. So he's under Johan Lang.
He's under Johan Lang.
Yeah. in the men's side of things. In the women's side of things, apparently he's going to be, Johan Lang. I don't think it's going to have anything to do with that, so he will be a step ahead of that. But in terms of the men's side, apparently he's going to be reporting to Johan.
They've created a role as part of the club's approach to build a modern, high-performance football structure to drive long-term success. I mean, if he's a replacement for Munn, I thought Munn was above that. So,
but it's a newly created role, though. It is so.
But surely a director of football operations. What's the difference, I guess, between a director of football operations and a sporting director? God, I it's just jargon at the end of the day. I guess, yeah, maybe it's not as important. I don't know if this guy's going to have a say, as I say, when it comes to Frank's job. Is he going to have a vote? As we've seen being reported, there's a split in the boardroom about Frank at the moment. Some people want him out, some people want him to stay.
Look, I'm sure this guy's going to have a say.
Does he have a vote?
I don't know if he has a vote. I don't know about that.
Does he have a vote when it comes to Frank? And my whole point was, Scott Munn, wasn't he quite instrumental in getting Ange in, right? Because, Australian connection, whatever. And also...
he restructured the physio department and stuff like that.
And also, he also took a brunt of the criticism for Ange not working out. Munn's got to go as well. So is this guy going to have... Is he going to want to install his own guy? That's where I was going with it. But I don't know if he has that much power.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But look, I'm sure if he sees things not working, and he'll definitely say, and he'll definitely have an point.
Guy.
Let's have a look. There's this thread on X about what he's done and what he's about. Let's go and have a look at it. And this account, Jewel THFC, says why Carlos Rafael Moersen could completely transform Tottenham to a top club. So this one caught my eye. And so this thread says Carlos Rafael Moersen isn't a household name, but he is one of the brains behind Manchester City's transfer and squad building machine. While coaches get the headlines, Moersen quietly ensures City sign elite players and build for long-term success. As a director of football transactions at the City Football Group, he handles the behind-the-scenes work that makes transfers happen: negotiation, contractual structures, squad planning, and financial compliance. Moersen ensures the right players arrive at the right time. So I guess from that aspect, Levy was obviously, when he was at Spurs, he was doing the role of 4 or 5 different people all at once. That's the key here. And I think when you're talking about Spurs being compliant with FFP and PSR and all that, maybe there's not someone that has that knowledge as much as Daniel Levy had. So maybe it's, imperative to bring someone in like this.
Yeah, and he had it to a very high level, clearly, if he's running it for the City Group. So, look, I don't know why he ended up leaving the City Group for whatever reason, but I think those aspects in terms of negotiation, contracts, all that kind of stuff, if he's going to be taking up some of that burden, that's only a positive, I would say, because we need the flak taken up since Levy's gone.
So that's that. Then he went on to say, Spurs' problem: 1, fragmented decision-making. Different managers and short-term fixes have left the squad unbalanced. Moersen could centralise football operations, making recruitment and squad planning consistent and long-term. And it's interesting that, because actually when we were when we went out for the pre-season game against Roma, do you remember when Conte was there, Paratici was there? Paratici was talking to someone that I know very well, and he was telling me the context of the conversation. And back then it was Conte's future was always up in the air at Spurs, and they were talking about that, and they were talking about, well, if you're not sure that Conte is going to be here for the long term, how do you manoeuvre the transfer window and stuff like that? And Paratici was saying to him that the transfer structure is based around bringing in players that have a long-term future at the club, no matter who the manager is, and whatever manager can mould these kind of players into their kind of image. And I guess that's what this guy has been doing at Manchester City.
That's what we need. Well, I guess there's a debate about that in terms of the whole debate is, do you buy back the manager in a sense that you buy what he wants specific to his system and you make the job as easy for him as possible, but then you risk of it not working out, having an unbalanced team and players that fit him? Or Is it about just having club signings? You decide on a player that's right for the club and that's good for the long term and a player you believe in, and get the manager that you have to just fit him in somehow or whatever, and that's the way you move forward, and maybe you're future-proofing a bit. If this manager goes, these players can still fit in. Now the problem is we've probably been doing a bit of a mishmash, haven't we?
Yeah.
Over the last few years. Sometimes some players are signed club signings, some are specific to the club, to the manager, sorry. So I think a much more cohesive strategy should be in place. You look at a team like Brighton, like that is just like perfect. All players are very technical. They all fit into the way that any of the manager wants to play. All managers that come through the door play similar style in terms of a similar philosophy of how they want to approach games, how they want to play their football, and the players are seamlessly integrated into that. At Tottenham, it's very different. As we say, we've gone from different styles of managers, and we've gone, some signings have been club signings during that time, and some have been fitted to the players.
The thing is, right, club signings, in a sense, aren't the issue here. The issue here is that Spurs' way of how they've gone from philosophy to philosophy to philosophy. Because if you stick with a philosophy and you have a manager and the next manager and the next manager that all have a similar philosophy, then the players that you bring in could all fit into each and every model. But if you're going from Conte to Nuno to Mourinho, from Poch to Ange and then back to Frank, then it's all a mismatch and it's never going to work.
Yeah, 100%. And not only that, it just gives... Every time there's a new manager, it's another rebuild, because you've got to get rid of all these players and you've got to get players that fit into his system or players that he can use better.
That's what I'm saying.
That's wastes so much time, it wastes so much money, and that's kind of the consequence of us not having a cohesive strategy down the years. And that's where we are now because of years and years of mismanagement from the very top. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying all the players are bad, it's just not cohesive, and that's the main thing.
Yeah. Then he goes on to say, problem 2, inefficient transfers. Spurs often overpay, sign the wrong profiles, or struggle to sell players. Moersen's approach, clearly player profiles, age, resale planning, centralized contract control, and data-backed signings.
Yeah, and to be fair, as much as people want to say about City, how much money they spent, they do rarely overpay.
Yeah.
I can't think. Maybe Grealish is one example of when they did, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
They've walked away from a few deals. Sanchez got too expensive, and they let United take him. Same with Maguire. They let United take him as well.
I think Declan Rice was one, wasn't it?
I think they matched Arsenal's bid. He just chose Arsenal, I think, or maybe Arsenal gazumped them a bit. But I'm just saying, City are very smart with their signings. They have a lot of players for big money, but there's no. They very rarely break transfer records for their signings. There's very much a lot of 50, 60 million pound signings for very good players, and for players who are very good in the long term as well.
Yeah.
And
they obviously play top wages.
And that is something definitely when we've gone big, it's not gone right for us. Let's be honest. More often than not. I think our record signings at the moment, Solanke. I don't think he's a bad player, but again, was it a bit of an overpayment? Probably. Richarlison, 60 million, that was an overpayment. And Ndombele, that was a complete flop. Brennan, we've made a loss on him. And then you're stuck with them. Lo Celso, paid big money for him.
Ndombele, I mean, all our big signings,
Soldado was
all
big
our
at the
big
time.
signings, they haven't worked out.
Yeah. So there's clearly a problem, and maybe that's why I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling cycle, because we're not smart enough to know when to go big or not. When we do go big, it goes wrong, and then that leads to a hesitancy to go big again by Levy, because he's not smart enough to know whether he's doing the right thing or not. So we need smart people in charge to realise when's the right time to go big on a player and when's not. And we have opportunities to go big on the right player, and we've missed out on them because we have this fear that, are we doing the right thing because we've done the wrong thing so many times.
It also ties in with the wage structure as well.
And that.
Because, you can see players like Man City, like plenty PSG, they can spend a similar amount on transfer fees than we spend, but obviously they're willing to go and pay the big wages, 250k plus.
Yeah.
Haaland didn't cost too much. Kvaratskhelia Kvaratskhelia didn't. All these players that were signed, are within our remit in terms of what we've been willing to pay for transfer fees. However, they're all on big wages. So unless you pay those big wages, it's hard to attract those kind of players, and you're always going to be shopping in the kind of second, third tier of players. That's the reality.
Yeah, but that's true. But that's also that 100% plays into it. But it's not really an excuse. That's an excuse for us to be falling behind the very, very top. It's not an excuse to be falling behind anyone below.
Correct.
Really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the point is, we were at that level, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were at that level, and we've dropped because of the wage structure thing.
A part of it, yeah.
Next one, he says, how he fits Frank. Well, Thomas Frank thrives in structural environments. Moersen builds the operational backbone. Frank focuses on coaching, tactics and player development. Separation of duties equals less chaos and more progress. Well, he definitely thrived in a structured environment at Brentford, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously been part of the problem here. Because he's come in. I know he's been still in the job and he's got the quote-unquote support, but there is a split in the dressing room, in the hierarchy already about him. There has not been really a cohesive strategy, I think, since coming in about everyone's on the same page. Fabio's ended up leaving. It's been a big mess at the moment. At Brentford, it was a very holistic approach with everyone. Everyone was in it together. It was a very collaborative approach with him in the hierarchy. They always worked together. There was no one going against each other.
But that's what they're trying to build, it seems.
But the problem with Brentford is easy to do that when your standards are let's stay up, essentially. And if 17th is a good season. And at Tottenham, there are standards he needs to hit. And at the moment, obviously, he's not hitting them, but, quite far off it, to be honest. So there's obviously a reason why that is the reality. But obviously, coming from a structure like Brentford and coming into Tottenham, where it's very political, it's very messy, clearly, and there's a lot of change, there was always struggles. Obviously, it's not the excuse of why we're failing as badly as we are, but it also goes a bit of a way to try and understand the challenges Frank has had since coming here.
Yeah, but it's not to say that it can't be done, because Brentford aren't the only team that's structured like that.
Absolutely.
You look at on a different level, on a different scale, like Manchester City. The way they're run. I know everyone's going to talk about the 115 charges and everything like that, but in terms of the way they're run, everyone's on the same page. Look at the way Arsenal run as well. Like, all these clubs are run probably, I wouldn't say in a similar way, but there are some comparisons that you can probably draw. It's just done on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, Brighton won brilliantly as well. Bournemouth are run pretty well. So there's definitely a lot of structures. Just Tottenham's not one of them at the moment.
But I'm saying that's what they're trying to build at Tottenham, it seems.
Yeah,
whether they're successful or not is a difference. Yeah, of course. It takes a long time, probably.
It takes time. It shouldn't take forever. You know what I mean? It shouldn't take maybe a year or so, but like getting these structures in place and getting a plan together, I don't think that should take like decades, put it that way.
Yeah, look at Arsenal, for example. They were an absolute mess. You had fans calling for the ownership to leave and everything like that. And then they started doing the right thing. And it took probably fans to see it maybe 2-3 years.
They gave Arteta a hell of a lot of power.
Yeah. Not from the beginning. Not from the beginning they didn't. He was a coach. And then after 2-3 years, he turned into manager.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe he earned that power, but I feel like City and Arsenal, they're very the difference between them and the likes of, I feel like, Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, these kind of teams is they've clearly just given the managers carte blanche, all the power to make all the calls, and it's very much a bit of as much as maybe above the manager. There's a more modern club structure that they have a more kind of old school manager has a lot of say within the decisions. I don't think that's the case at Brighton and Brentford and Bournemouth. I think at this point they're happy to lose. Managers come and go there, and they're happy it can change, and that doesn't really affect them. Whereas at Arsenal and City right now, there is so much power to those managers.
Yeah, right now, because the managers have earned that power. But when they were in that kind of building phase that we were in, I think Edu was the top guy at Arsenal, and he was the one making the majority of the shots.
Yeah, but I remember Arteta wanted Aubameyang gone, cancelled his contract, wanted Ozil gone, cancelled his contract. He's made a lot of big calls, and they've backed him on them.
Yeah, but look, Spurs have done that with Brendan Johnson, it seems, with Thomas Frank. You know?
Well, I wouldn't. don't know if it's on the same level, but I guess top goal scorer.
I mean, there was a lot of excuses to keep Brennan Johnson at the football club and hold on for the money if we really wanted to, but Thomas Frank wasn't utilising him, and it was clear for me that Thomas Frank was the one that didn't want Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, but Aubameyang was the captain, top goal scorer and highest earner.
Yeah.
I don't think Brennan was that kind of squad status in this squad, I would say.
No, but he was still our top goal scorer, scored the most important Spurs goal that we can remember. So he still had a big status in the squad. Maybe nowhere near as big as Aubameyang.
I don't think it's a bigger call to sell Brennan as it is to cancel Aubameyang's contract, is my point. But like the question is, like, given what we're discussing, like, do you give like a manager has to earn that? So Frank has to earn that power, doesn't he? You don't just get given to him.
Yeah, and you don't get it given to you. Definitely not after 6 months anyway.
Yeah.
Then he goes bigger picture. Frank and Moersen. Oh, I think I went. Did I say that one?
No.
Bigger picture. Frank and Moersen. Club leg stability, not manager led chaos. Smarter transfers, consistent style, clear squad strategy. Exactly how to top clubs like City, Arsenal, and Liverpool operate.
Well, this is in 16th December. That was a month ago. I don't know if this guy has seen our football for the last month or not. No, but look, I get it. I get trying to see it from that point of view. It's just the question is Frank the right guy to back? But, that time will tell, I guess, at the moment.
He says, Moersen structures the club. Frank develops a squad. If Tottenham hire him, it's not just an executive. It's a modern, sustainable top club model, giving Spurs a real chance to compete at the highest level. And then he says, a bonus, he's been the key behind the scenes of players like Gvardiol, Marmoush, Savinho, Kuzanov, and more.
Okay. Well, this guy seems to... Well, I don't know if the guy knows what he's talking about, but seems to have a lot of knowledge. He's a Bromby fan as well. No wonder he's... No, is that Bromby? No, Bronshot. No, it's not Bromby.
He's Danish.
He's Danish.
That's for sure.
I see. Now I'm starting to understand why he's always back in the narrative of keeping Frank and why it's such a match made in heaven.
But look, that is the situation. Rafi Morrison has joined the football club. I think that he's still on gardening leave with the City group and won't join for a few months. But we all know at Tottenham that's not the way it always works. He's probably doing some work behind the scenes. So that's that situation.